The massive hall buzzed with voices from across the galaxy. Creatures of every shape and size filled the floating seats that circled the central stage. Some had scales that glowed blue in the dim light. Others had crystal bodies that rang like bells when they moved. A few floated in tanks of purple liquid, their tentacles dancing as they spoke. Hana stood at the edge of the crowd, her simple human uniform looking plain next to the fancy armor and robes around her. She was tall for a human woman, with short black hair and calm dark eyes. On her collar, small badges showed she had fought in 12 battles across 4 star systems. But here, surrounded by aliens who had conquered entire galaxies, her achievements seemed tiny. "The topic today is combat efficiency," announced the floating voice that ran the meeting. "Each species will present their methods of warfare." The first to speak was Kexthos, a Velthari general. He was twice as tall as any human, with 4 arms and skin like metal. His people had ruled the eastern spiral of the galaxy for 3,000 years. When he walked to the center stage, each step made the floor shake. "My people are perfect warriors," Kexthos said, his voice deep like thunder. "We feel no fear. We feel no doubt. When we see an enemy, we destroy them. No hesitation. No mercy. This is why we win." The crowd made sounds of agreement. Clicks, hums, and roars filled the air. Next came Velthara, whose crystal body caught the light and threw rainbows across the walls. She was a commander of the Nexari, a race that thought faster than computers and planned battles like chess games. "Raw strength is nothing without perfect planning," Velthara said, her voice like music. "My people calculate every possibility before we act. We know the outcome of a battle before it starts. We never waste time, energy, or lives on poor decisions." More sounds of approval echoed through the hall. Then came speaker after speaker. The Kraxi, who hunted in perfect formation like wolves made of shadow. The Thekmori, whose poison claws could kill with a single scratch. The Zephyrians, who moved faster than most eyes could follow. Each one talked about their perfect killing methods. Each one showed videos of their victories. Each one explained why their species was the ultimate predator. Finally, the floating voice called, "Now we hear from the humans." Hana felt every eye in the room turn to her. Thousands of alien stares, some curious, some bored, most dismissive. She walked to the center stage, her boots making small sounds on the metal floor. "My name is Hana," she began. "I teach tactics at the Human Military Academy." "We humans," interrupted Kexthos with something like a laugh. "The new species. Tell us, little human, how many enemies can you kill in 1 minute?" "That's not really how we—" "How fast can you move?" asked a Zephyrian whose body was mostly a blur of motion. "Can you dodge laser fire? We don't usually— Do you have poison, claws, mind powers?" This from a creature that looked like a walking tree with too many teeth. Hana tried to continue. "Human warfare focuses on teamwork," and the hall exploded with laughter. Not cruel laughter, but the kind adults make when a child says something cute and foolish. Velthara's crystal body chimed as she moved. "Teamwork? You mean you cannot fight alone? You need others to help you survive. We work together because you are weak," finished Kexthos. "I have read your military reports, human. You hesitate before killing. You try to save enemies who surrender. You waste time helping wounded soldiers instead of finishing the mission." A creature with 6 legs and fur like silver needles spoke up. "I studied human battle records. They stop fighting to help civilians. They risk their own lives to save strangers. This is not efficient." "Emotional creatures," added Velthara. "They let feelings control their actions. Fear makes them hide. Anger makes them stupid. Love makes them weak." Dojin, Hana's colleague, stood up from the human section. He was younger than Hana, with worried eyes behind wire glasses. "But humans have won every battle we've fought since joining the galactic community." The laughter got louder. "Against pirates and rebels," said Kexthos. "Child's play. You have never faced a real military force. Your wins come from luck and alien allies, added the six-legged creature. Alone, humans are nothing special. Slow, weak, with poor senses and soft skin, Hana felt heat rise in her cheeks, but kept her voice calm. Perhaps you're right that we're not the strongest or fastest, but there is no but, Velthara cut her off. Combat is simple mathematics. Strength plus speed plus intelligence equals victory. Humans score low in all categories. What about adaptability? Hana asked. What about problem-solving under pressure? Pretty words for cannot decide what to do, said Kexthos. Efficient killers know exactly what to do. Kill the enemy. Win the battle. Take the territory. Simple. An ancient creature that looked like a floating jellyfish spoke in a voice like wind through caves. I have lived for 2,000 of your years, human. I have seen species rise and fall. The galaxy belongs to the strong. Your people are kind, but kindness does not win wars. The floating voice that ran the meeting spoke again. We will now assign roles for the upcoming joint military exercise. Based on today's presentations, combat roles will go to species with proven killing efficiency. Hana watched as the assignments appeared on screens around the room. The Velthari got assault command. The Nexari took tactical planning. The Kraxi received hunt and destroy missions. Dozens of other species got important combat positions. At the bottom of the list, in small letters, she found the human assignments. Support roles, medical assistance, supply transport, communication relay. No combat positions? Dojin asked, his voice tight with disappointment. Kexthos turned to them with something that might have been pity. Little humans, you are not warriors. Accept this. Find your place helping those who are. But we could show you, Hana started. The decision is made. Velthara's crystal voice rang with finality. The exercise will test real military capabilities, not good intentions. We cannot risk the mission on species that think too much and kill too little. As the meeting ended, aliens began floating, walking, and slithering toward the exits. Many stopped to talk with each other about strategy and weapons. None stopped to talk with the humans. Hana and Dojin stood alone in the emptying hall. They don't understand us, Dojin said quietly. Hana watched the last aliens leave. Her jaw was set in a way Dojin recognized. It was the look she got before doing something that would either save everyone or get them all in trouble. No, she said. They don't understand us at all. What are you thinking? Hana smiled, but it wasn't a happy smile. It was the smile of someone who had just been challenged and was already planning how to prove the challengers wrong. I'm thinking they're right about one thing, she said. We're not efficient killers. That's supposed to make me feel better. We're something much more dangerous than that. Hana continued, still smiling that sharp smile. And they're about to find out what. The hall was empty now except for the two humans. In the silence, Dojin could almost hear the wheels turning. In Hana's mind, should I be worried? He asked. Probably, Hana said, but not about us. The transport ship carrying Earth's team was small compared to the massive vessels around it. Through the porthole, Hana watched alien warships that looked like floating cities. Some were covered in spikes and guns, others gleamed like polished mirrors. A few were so strange she couldn't tell which end was the front. Nervous? Asked Jiho, settling into the seat beside her. Hana's old friend was a calm man who spoke softly and thought deeply. His graying hair and lined face made him look older than his 40 years, but his eyes were sharp as a young soldier's. He had planned battles on 17 different worlds and had never lost one. Not nervous, Hana replied. Curious. About the exercise? About why they agreed to let us watch. The ship shuddered as it docked with training facility Omega-7. Through the connecting tube, they could see the asteroid base spreading out like a metal spider web. Thousands of levels, millions of rooms, all built into the hollowed-out heart of a dead rock floating in space. Shuri bounced in her seat like an excited child. She was small even for a human, with bright eyes and hands that never stayed still. Most people meeting her would think she was harmless. They would be wrong. Shuri knew more about explosives than anyone else in the galaxy, and she could make a bomb from parts most people would use to fix a broken door. Look at the size of this place, she whispered. I bet I could bring down the whole thing with just 3 charges in the right spots. Let's try not to blow up the training facility, said Wanho dryly. Where Suri was small and energetic, Wanho was tall and quiet. He moved like a shadow and could hide in places other people couldn't even see. On his last mission, he had spent 3 days inside an enemy base without anyone knowing he was there. He came back with complete maps, guard schedules, and the locations of all their weapons. The exercise parameters are being uploaded now, Jiho said, checking his tablet. Interesting. The screen showed a 3-dimensional map of Omega-7. Most of the base was marked in red, enemy territory. Small blue zones, scattered throughout, showed where civilians were trapped. Green dots marked possible entry points, but there weren't many. Hostage situation, Hana observed. Complex environment, multiple objectives. 40,000 civilian prisoners, Jiho read. Enemy force of unknown size controlling the base's defense systems. Mission goal, neutralize all threats while minimizing casualties. Sounds like fun, Suri grinned. They docked and moved through the station's corridors toward the command center. The hallways were crowded with alien soldiers preparing for the exercise. Hana watched them with professional interest. The Velthari were checking their weapons, massive guns that could punch holes through steel walls. They moved in perfect formation, each soldier knowing exactly where to be without needing orders. The Nexari floated in small groups, their crystal bodies flashing with light as they shared information directly through their quantum consciousness. They could process battle data faster than any computer and react as one mind. The Kraxi prowled in packs, their shadow-like forms shifting and changing shape. They could slip through cracks in walls and appear behind enemies like living nightmares. Impressive, admitted Wanho. Very, agreed Hana. And predictable. In the command center, holographic displays showed the exercise zone from every angle. Alien commanders gathered around planning tables, their voices mixing in dozens of languages. Some argued about tactics, others calculated odds and variables. Kexthos stood at the center, his forearms gesturing at battle plans. Direct assault on 3 fronts, overwhelming force. The enemy will break before our advance. Too simple, chimed Velthara. The optimal solution requires systematic clearance, room by room, level by level, minimal risk, maximum efficiency. My people can infiltrate through the ventilation systems, offered the leader of a snake-like species. Strike from within while others attack from outside. All good plans, said the exercise controller, a floating sphere covered in sensors. Each species will execute their preferred strategy. Whichever approach succeeds, first will be declared most effective. Hana raised her hand. What about observer status for the human team? The sphere's sensors focused on her. Humans are assigned to medical and supply support. You will monitor the exercise from this command center. We'd like to request permission to... Request denied, Kexthos interrupted without looking at her. This is not a training exercise for beginners. Real tactics require real warriors. Jiho touched Hana's arm gently, a signal to let it go for now. The first phase began with much fanfare. Alien forces took positions around the asteroid base, their ships forming an impressive blockade. Weapon systems powered up with sounds like thunder. Troops moved to assault positions. Inside the command center, holographic displays showed everything in real time. The human team watched from a corner table, officially there to provide medical consultation if needed. Phase 1 commencing, announced the exercise controller. The Velthari launched their attack first. Massive explosions lit up the asteroid's surface as they blasted new entrances through the outer hull. Their soldiers poured through the gaps in perfect formation, weapons ready, advancing steadily toward the first objective. Look at that coordination, Dojin said quietly. Every soldier knows exactly what to do. The Nexari took a different approach. Instead of brute force, they sent probe drones to map the interior while their main force waited. Crystal soldiers floated in meditation, calculating the perfect path through the maze of corridors and rooms. 27.4% casualty, rate predicted with current Velthari approach, Velthara announced. Suboptimal. Switching to precision mode. On another screen, the Craxi were already inside somehow. Their shadow forms slipped through cracks no one else had noticed, moving like dark water through the station's infrastructure. How did they get in there? Suri wondered. Wanho studied the display carefully. Service tunnels, maintenance shafts. They found the spaces between the walls. The exercise continued for 2 hours. Alien forces made steady progress, but it was slow. The enemy AI defending the base adapted to each attack, repositioning defenses and cutting off advance routes. Casualty numbers began climbing on all sides. Civilian casualties at 12%. The controller announced. Acceptable, said Kexthos. For Phase 1, added Velthara. Rates will increase as we penetrate deeper. Hana watched the displays with growing interest. The AI wasn't just defending randomly. It was learning, adapting, responding to each species' tactics in specific ways. Jiho, she said quietly. I see it too, he replied. The AI knows their standard procedures. It's been programmed with galactic military databases, Wanho realized. Every known tactic, every species-specific strategy, it knows what they're going to do before they do it. But, Suri grinned, it doesn't know what we would. Dominio appeared at their table carrying a steaming cup of coffee and looking nervous. He was one of the few humans working in the station's technical systems, supposedly there to maintain communication relays. Interesting exercise, he said casually, but his eyes were focused on Hana. Very educational, she agreed. You know, Minho continued in the same casual tone. The communication system is really complex. So many access points. Sometimes the wrong people might accidentally get connected to the wrong networks. Accidents happen, Hana said. They do, especially during exercises when everyone's distracted. He set down a small device that looked like a standard communication relay. This might help you stay connected to the right information. As Minho walked away, Jiho picked up the device. He's giving us access to the exercise systems. That would be against regulations, Hana said innocently. Terribly against regulations, Jiho agreed with a straight face. On the main display, alien forces continued their slow advance. Casualty counts rose steadily. The AI defender was proving more challenging than anyone had expected. Phase 2 will commence in 6 hours, the controller announced. All forces consolidate positions and prepare for deeper penetration. 6 hours, Suri said. Long enough for some creative problem-solving. If someone were inclined to solve problems, Wanho added. Hana looked at her team. Each face showed the same expression, the look of professionals who had spotted a challenge worth accepting. Well, she said, we are here to observe and learn. Educational observation, Jiho agreed. Very hands-on learning, Suri grinned. The alien commanders were busy with their own planning, paying no attention to the small group of humans in the corner. They had dismissed Earth's people as irrelevant support staff, useful only for carrying supplies and treating wounded. They were about to learn how wrong they could be. The command center buzzed with controlled chaos as Phase 2 began. Holographic displays showed alien forces advancing deeper into the asteroid base, their progress marked by flashing lights and steady casualty reports. Hana sat at the human observation table, officially reviewing medical supply reports. In reality, she was studying something far more interesting. The small device Minho had left was now connected to her tablet, showing her information the aliens didn't know she could access. The AI is remarkable, whispered Sunmi, leaning closer, to examine the data. Sunmi was a specialist in psychological warfare, trained to understand how minds worked under pressure. She was quiet and thoughtful, with eyes that noticed everything. During the rebellion on Kepler Station, she had ended a 3-month siege by convincing the enemy commander to surrender without firing a single shot. Look at these response patterns, Sunmi continued, pointing to streams of data flowing across the screen. It's not just defending randomly, it's using specific countermeasures for each species. Beside her, Taman nodded grimly. He was a systems analyst who could read computer behavior like other people read books. His fingers moved quickly across his own tablet, translating the AI's actions into understandable patterns. The AI has been studying galactic military doctrine for decades, Taman said. Every major battle, every tactical manual, every species-specific strategy. It knows exactly how each race fights. On the main displays, the Velthari assault was slowing down. Their perfect formations, which had worked against every enemy they'd faced for 3,000 years, were being torn apart by precisely placed defensive fire. The AI knew exactly where they would advance, exactly how they would coordinate, exactly when they would strike. Velthari casualties at 38%, announced the exercise controller. Kexthos's 4 arms gestured angrily at his tactical display. Impossible. The enemy cannot predict our movements with such accuracy. But it could, and it was. The Nexari were facing similar problems. Their quantum consciousness allowed them to process information faster than any other species. But the AI was processing information even faster. Every calculation they made, every tactical decision, was already accounted for in the AI's defensive matrix. Nexari advance halted at level 7, Velthara reported, her crystal voice showing the first signs of confusion. Enemy responses are mathematically improbable. Unless it knows what you're going to do, Hana muttered under her breath. The Kraxi were having better luck, but not much. Their shadow forms could slip through spaces other species couldn't reach, but the AI had mapped every service tunnel, every maintenance shaft, every hidden passage. Defensive systems were waiting for them in places they thought were secret. This is fascinating, said Taman, scrolling through more data. The AI isn't just using standard defensive protocols, it's using psychological warfare specifically tailored to each species. What do you mean? Asked Hana. Look at this. Taman shared his screen. Against the Velthari, it's using tactics designed to frustrate their need for honor and direct combat. Against the Nexari, it's creating mathematical chaos to overload their calculation abilities. Against the Kraxi, it's forcing them into open spaces where they can't use their stealth advantage. Sunmi's eyes lit up with understanding. It's not just defending against their bodies. It's defending against their minds, their psychology, their fundamental nature. The human team watched in growing amazement as species after species encountered the same problem. Every attack was predicted. Every strategy was countered. Every advance was stopped by defenses that seemed impossibly well prepared. Civilian casualties now at 28%, the controller announced. Still acceptable, said Kexthos, but his voice sounded less confident than before. For Phase 2, added Velthara. Projections for Phase 3 show exponential increases. New player entered the game, the Tekmori. They were a species that looked like armored predators with claws that dripped poison. Their approach to warfare was simple. Kill everything that moved, sort out friend from enemy later. Finally, growled their pack leader, a creature whose scars told stories of 100 battles. Enough of this careful dancing. We end this now. The Tekmori attack was brutal and direct. They smashed through defensive lines, ignored casualties, and carved a bloody path toward the first civilian zone. For a moment it looked like their savage approach might succeed where precision had failed. Then the AI adapted. Automated systems began sealing corridors behind the Tekmori, trapping them in kill boxes. Defensive turrets switched from standard weapons to chemical dispersal systems that neutralized their poison claws. Emergency bulkheads dropped, splitting their packs into isolated groups. Tekmori casualties at 67%, the controller reported. Civilian casualties at 41%. Unacceptable, several alien commanders said at once. But predictable, Hana said quietly. Jiho looked at her. You're seeing something, aren't you? I'm seeing everything, Hana replied. The AI isn't just smart. It's been programmed with the assumption that all galactic species think and fight, in known, predictable ways. Which they do, said Wanho, who had been silently studying the tactical displays. Which they do, Hana agreed. But we don't. Because we're too new, realized Sunmi. The AI doesn't have enough data on human behavior patterns. Or because human behavior doesn't follow predictable patterns, added Taman. The exercise continued, but the aliens were clearly struggling. 3 hours into Phase 2, not a single force had reached their primary objectives. Casualty rates were climbing beyond acceptable levels. The AI defender seemed to anticipate every move before it was made. In the command center, alien commanders began arguing among themselves. "Your systematic approach is too slow," Kexthos accused Velthara. "Your direct assault is too wasteful," she replied coldly. "Both approaches are flawed," hissed the Craxi leader. "Stealth is the only viable option. Stealth has proven equally ineffective," pointed out a commander whose species looked like walking plants. As the arguing continued, Hana noticed something interesting. The aliens were all focused on their own methods, their own strengths, their own ways of thinking. None of them were considering alternatives that fell outside their species' natural patterns. "They're trapped by their own perfection," she whispered to her team. "What do you mean?" asked Jiho. "Each species has spent thousands of years perfecting their military doctrine. They've become so good at their way of fighting that they can't imagine doing it any other way." "But that's not necessarily bad," Wanho pointed out. "Specialization has advantages. Unless you're facing an enemy that knows your specialization and has prepared specifically for it," Sunmi realized, "then your strength becomes your weakness." The situation was getting worse. Multiple alien forces were pinned down, unable to advance without taking catastrophic casualties. The AI seemed to be learning faster than they could adapt. "Emergency protocols are being considered," announced the exercise controller. "If casualty rates exceed 50%, the exercise will be terminated." "Unacceptable," said Kexthos. "We will not be defeated by a computer program." "The program is performing within acceptable parameters," replied Velthara. "The fault lies in our approach." "Our approach is perfect," snapped the Tekmori leader. "The program is cheating." Hana watched the alien commanders argue, while their forces continued to struggle against an enemy that seemed to know them better than they knew themselves. In her mind, a plan was beginning to form. A dangerous plan that would either prove humanity's worth or get them all in serious trouble. "Jiho," she said quietly. "I know that tone," he replied. "What are you thinking?" "I'm thinking about inefficient killers," Hana said with a small smile. "Should I be worried?" "Probably," she said, echoing her words from the first day. "But not about us." Around them, the command center continued its controlled chaos. Alien forces were trapped, casualties were mounting, and the supposedly superior military minds of the galaxy were running out of ideas. That's when Hana decided to show them what humans could do. "Emergency override activated," Hana announced in a clear voice that cut through the arguments in the command center. Every alien head turned to look at her. Kexthos's 4 arms stopped moving. Velthara's crystal body stopped chiming. Even the exercise controller's sensors focused on the small human woman who had just spoken with the authority of a battlefield commander. "Human team requesting immediate deployment under Training Protocol 7, Hana continued, reading from her tablet as if this had all been planned. "There is no Training Protocol 7, said the exercise controller. "Emergency field assessment," Jiho added smoothly, stepping up beside Hana. "When observer species identify critical tactical oversights, they may request demonstration opportunities." "This is highly irregular," Velthara's voice rang with disapproval. "So is a 60% casualty rate with 0 objectives completed," Hana replied calmly. Kexthos made a sound that might have been laughter. "Little human, you think you can succeed where we have failed? I think we can try something different." "Different how?" Hana looked directly at the massive Veltari general. "We'll be inefficient." Before anyone could object, Hana was already moving toward the deployment bay. Her team followed without question. Jiho with his strategic mind, Suri with her explosive expertise, Wanho with his stealth skills, and the others who had been quietly preparing for this moment. "This is against all protocols," the exercise controller protested. "But fascinating from a research perspective," added Sunmi, speaking for the first time. "If humans fail, You confirm your theories about inferior species. If humans succeed, you learn new tactics. Either way, the data is valuable. The logic was sound enough that the controller's objections faded. Besides, what harm could 6 humans do that 40 alien armies couldn't? In the deployment bay, the human team prepared quickly. Unlike the aliens with their specialized weapons and heavy armor, the humans wore simple combat gear and carried standard equipment. They looked almost primitive compared to the high-tech forces already in the field. Kyung, are you connected to their communication systems? Hana asked. Kyung was young, barely 25, but his fingers could dance through computer networks like a musician playing piano. He had learned to hack systems by studying alien code languages most humans couldn't even pronounce. I'm in, he said, his fingers flying over a portable keyboard. Their internal communications, security cameras, environmental controls, all of it. Don't shut anything down, Hana warned. Just watch and listen. Watching and listening, Kyung confirmed. Nara was already studying building plans on her tablet. She was an infiltration specialist who could slip through security that kept out entire armies. Her small size and quick mind made her perfect for getting into places where she didn't belong. Multiple entry points, she reported. But they're all covered by defensive systems. The ones that are marked on the official maps, said Wanho. Exactly. The deployment transport was a small, quiet ship that could slip between larger vessels without being noticed. As they approached the asteroid base, Hana could see the evidence of alien attacks. Blast holes in the outer hull, debris floating in space, and the continuous flashes of weapons fire from inside. Look at that damage pattern, observed Jun. Jun was officially their combat medic, but his special forces background meant he could fight as well as heal. He had served in 3 different war zones and had learned to see battles from all angles. The aliens are attacking the strongest points, he continued. Main entrances, command centers, communication hubs. Because those are the logical targets, said Hana, but not necessarily the right targets. The transport docked at a maintenance port that barely appeared on the station maps. It was designed for supply ships and repair crews, not military operations. The airlock was small, the lighting was poor, and it smelled like machine oil and recycled air. Perfect. Kyung, what do you see on the internal sensors? Hana asked as they moved through service corridors. The AI is tracking all the alien forces, he reported, watching data stream across his screen. It knows exactly where every Velthari soldier is, every Nexari crystal formation, every Craxi shadow. But not us? Not us. We're not registering as a threat, just maintenance workers or maybe lost civilians. They moved through the station like ghosts. Where the aliens had attacked with force and fury, the humans simply walked through service areas and maintenance tunnels. Where other species had announced their presence with weapons fire and battle cries, the humans moved in silence. First, civilian group is 3 levels down, Nara reported, checking her scanner. 27 humans from a mining ship. Guards, 2 automated sentries. Standard patrol pattern. Sorry. The small explosives expert smiled. Give me 30 seconds. What followed was not the massive explosion most people would expect from a demolitions expert. Instead, Suri placed 2 small charges that created just enough noise and confusion to draw the sentries away from their posts. When they investigated the distraction, Wanho was waiting in the shadows. The sentries never saw him coming. They never had a chance to raise an alarm. One moment they were investigating a suspicious sound, the next they were offline. Civilians secure, Jun reported, already checking the rescued miners for injuries. Minor malnutrition, some dehydration, but otherwise healthy. How did they get past the defenses so easily? One of the miners asked. We didn't go past them, Hana explained. We went around them. This became the pattern. While alien forces battered themselves against prepared defensive positions, the human team moved through spaces the AI wasn't watching. Service corridors, maintenance shafts, cargo holds, and dozens of other areas that didn't appear on tactical maps. Next group, Wanho reported, 43 Nexari civilians. But this one's tricky. The display showed a more complex situation. The civilian Nexari were trapped in a section surrounded by defensive turrets and force fields. 3 different alien military units had tried to reach them and failed. "Direct assault is impossible," said Nara, studying the defenses. "Too much. Firepower concentrated in too small an area. Good thing we're not making a direct assault," Hana said. Instead of attacking the defenses, Kyung began making subtle changes to the station's environmental systems. Temperature adjustments here, air pressure modifications there, lighting changes that would be barely noticeable to most species. "What are you doing?" asked Suri. "Making the AI think there's a system malfunction," Kyung explained. "Minor enough that it won't trigger major alarms, but significant enough that automated systems will try to compensate." 20 minutes later, the defensive turrets began a maintenance cycle, just for 2 minutes while they updated their targeting systems to account for the environmental changes. 2 minutes was all the humans needed. Wonho and Nara slipped through the briefly undefended area, reached the civilians and guided them out through a path that existed only because the AI was distracted by system anomalies that weren't really system anomalies. "Incredible," whispered one of the rescued Nexari. "How did you know the defenses would cycle at exactly that moment?" "We didn't," Hana admitted. "We made them cycle at that moment." In the command center, alien commanders watched their displays with growing confusion. Casualty reports from human operations were not just low, they were 0. Mission success rates were not just good, they were perfect. "How are they doing this?" demanded Kexthos. "Unknown," replied the exercise controller. "Human forces are not following any recognized tactical doctrine." "Then what are they following?" The controller's sensors whirred as it analyzed the data. "No pattern detected. Their behavior appears random." It wasn't random, but it was something the galactic military mind couldn't understand. The humans weren't following rules of engagement that had been written by species who thought in straight lines and clear categories. They were making it up as they went along, adapting to each situation with a flexibility that confused artificial intelligence designed to predict logical behavior. "Third civilian group secured," June reported. "No casualties." "Fourth group located," added Wonho. "Beginning approach." In just 2 hours, the small human team had accomplished more than the entire alien force had managed in 8 hours of combat. They had rescued over 200 civilians, neutralized dozens of defensive systems, and hadn't lost a single person. More importantly, they had done it all without the AI understanding how. "This is impossible," muttered Velthara, watching the displays. "They should not be able to achieve these results with such limited resources. Unless," said a quiet voice from the back of the command center, "efficiency isn't about having the biggest weapons or the fastest computers." Everyone turned to look at the speaker. It was Dojin, the human communications officer who had been dismissed along with the rest of his species. "What do you mean?" asked the exercise controller. Dojin smiled politely. "Maybe efficiency is about using whatever works, even if it doesn't make sense to anyone else." On the displays, Hana's team was already moving toward their next objective, still invisible to the AI, still succeeding where others had failed, still proving that being an inefficient killer might be the most efficient thing of all. The command center had gone quiet. Alien commanders who had been arguing loudly just hours before now stood in stunned silence, watching displays that showed impossible things happening. "Human team has now rescued 412 civilians," announced the exercise controller. "0 casualties, 0 failed objectives." Kexthos's forearms hung motionless at his sides. "This cannot be accurate." "All data has been verified," the controller replied. "Human forces continue to operate with 100% success rate." On the main display, Hana's team was approaching the most difficult objective yet, a heavily fortified section where 300 civilian engineers were trapped. Every alien force that had attempted this rescue had been driven back with massive casualties. Jisoo studied the tactical situation from inside the station. She was a coordination specialist who could see patterns in chaos, turning confused situations into organized victories. Her quiet voice was now directing the human team through their most complex operation yet. Defensive positions are locked into standard patterns, she reported through her communicator. They're designed to stop conventional attacks. Define conventional, Hana replied. Direct assault, siege tactics, infiltration through known entry, points. Everything the alien forces have tried. What about unconventional? Jisoo smiled, even though no one could see her through the communication link. That's where it gets interesting. What happened next would be studied in military academies across the galaxy for decades to come. Instead of attacking the fortified position, the human team began what appeared to be random actions throughout the station. Hiju, their sniper, took position at a location that had no clear tactical value. Her rifle was aimed at what looked like an empty corridor. Target acquired, she reported calmly. What target? Asked Velthera, monitoring the human communications. There is nothing in that corridor. Hiju's shot echoed through the station. She had hit a small sensor relay that most people wouldn't even notice. The relay wasn't critical to the base's defense, but its destruction caused a cascade of minor system adjustments throughout the sector. Meanwhile, Junho was placing explosive charges in locations that made no military sense. A maintenance closet, a water recycling unit, a backup power coupling that wasn't even connected to anything important. These humans are wasting resources, observed the Craxi leader. Their targeting is completely illogical. The explosions, when they came, were small and seemed insignificant, but each blast created vibrations that traveled through the station's structure in carefully calculated patterns. Combined with the sensor relay damage, these vibrations confused the AI's acoustic detection systems just enough to create blind spots in its awareness. Now, whispered Hana. Yuna moved like liquid shadow through the blind spots Hiju and Junho had created. She was their combat specialist, trained in 17 different fighting styles from 9 different worlds. But instead of using her deadly skills to kill, she did something that shocked every alien observer. She deliberately wounded an enemy guard with a non-lethal shot to the shoulder. Inefficient, muttered Kexthos. She should have killed him. Should she? Asked Sunmi, who was now standing at the human observation table in the command center. The wounded guard's distress call did exactly what Yuna had planned. 3 other guards abandoned their posts to help their injured comrade, opening a path that hadn't existed moments before. The AI, programmed to value the lives of its defenders, prioritized medical assistance over tactical positioning. Fascinating, admitted Velthera. She used their own protective instincts against them. That's just the beginning, Sunmi said. What followed was a masterclass in human warfare that the watching aliens had never imagined possible. The human team didn't fight like any known species. They fought like humans, which meant they fought like whatever the situation required. When stealth was needed, they moved like Craxi shadows. When precision was required, they calculated like Nexari crystals. When force was necessary, they struck like Velthari warriors. But they did all of these things in combinations and sequences that followed no established doctrine. Most importantly, they did things that made no sense until later. June, their medic, spent precious time treating wounded enemy guards instead of finishing them off. This seemed wasteful until the rescued guards began providing information about defensive positions, grateful to the humans who had shown them mercy. Psychological warfare, realized Sunmi, explaining to the confused alien. Commanders, he's turning enemies into allies through kindness. Kyung continued his electronic infiltration, but instead of shutting down enemy systems, he began making them work better. Communication networks became clearer, environmental systems became more efficient, even weapon targeting systems became more accurate. Why are they improving enemy systems? Demanded the Thekmori leader. Because improved systems generate more data, Taman explained, his voice carrying across the command center. And more data means more predictable patterns. They're not disabling the AI, they're making it overconfident. The most shocking moment came when Wanho encountered a squad of enemy soldiers in a narrow corridor. Instead of fighting or hiding, he did something unprecedented in galactic military history. He started a conversation. Excuse me. he said politely in the enemy's language. "I think I'm lost. Could you help me find the way to Section C?" The enemy soldiers, programmed to respond to various combat scenarios, had no protocols for dealing with a polite lost person. Their AI guidance systems crashed trying to categorize this encounter. Were they looking at an enemy, a civilian, or a confused maintenance worker? While they stood frozen in confusion trying to process this impossible situation, Wanho simply walked past them and continued his mission. "Combat avoidance through social manipulation," breathed one of the alien observers. "They're weaponizing politeness." "It's not a weapon," Hana's voice came through the communication system as she led her team toward the final objective. "It's just common sense. Why fight when you can talk? Why kill when you can convince? Why destroy when you can redirect?" The human team reached the trapped engineers using a combination of techniques that should not have worked together: stealth and diplomacy, technology and psychology, precision and improvisation. They moved through defenses designed to stop every known form of warfare by using forms of warfare that weren't known. "Final civilian group secured," June reported. "All objectives complete. 0 casualties across all operations." The command center was silent, except for the hum of computers processing data that shouldn't exist. "Analysis complete," announced the exercise controller after several long minutes. "Human forces have achieved 100% mission success with 0 losses. Total operation time, 4 hours, 17 minutes. Total enemy neutralizations, 0. 0? Kexthos's voice cracked slightly. "They neutralized 0 enemies?" "Correct. Human forces did not kill a single opponent." "Then how did they succeed?" demanded Velthara. "They didn't fight the enemy," Sunmi explained, her voice gentle but clear. "They convinced the enemy to stop fighting them." The alien commanders stared at the displays showing impossible results achieved through incomprehensible methods. "This is not warfare," said the Craxi leader. "This is something else." "Yes," agreed Hana, her team now safely back in the command center. "It's problem solving." "Problems are solved through superior firepower," insisted Kexthos. "Sometimes," Hana acknowledged. "But sometimes they're solved through understanding, sometimes through creativity, sometimes through just being nice to people who expect you to be cruel." "But your methods are unpredictable," protested Velthara. "How can such chaos be effective?" "Because," said Jiho, speaking for the first time since the operation began, "the universe is unpredictable. Enemies are unpredictable. Situations are unpredictable. The only way to deal with unpredictability is to be more unpredictable than anything you're facing. And humans," added Suri with a grin, "are very good at being unpredictable." The exercise was officially over, but its implications were just beginning to sink in. Everything the galaxy thought it knew about warfare, about efficiency, about what made a species superior in combat, had just been turned upside down by 6 humans who refused to follow the rules. "How do we learn to fight like this?" asked a young alien officer. "You don't," Hana said simply. "You learn to think like this, and that's much harder." The debriefing chamber was the largest meeting room on the station, but it felt small with so many alien commanders packed inside. Representatives from dozens of species sat, floated or hovered around a circular table, all staring at the small group of humans at its center. Hana looked around at faces that showed confusion, disbelief, and in some cases, a grudging respect that hadn't been there before. The silence stretched until Kexthos finally spoke. "Explain," he said simply. "Where would you like me to start?" Hana asked. "Start with how you achieved impossible results using inferior methods." Hyun stepped forward. As a military historian, he had studied warfare across dozens of species and hundreds of conflicts. His gentle manner and soft voice made him seem harmless, but his mind contained the tactical wisdom of ages. "General Kexthos," he began respectfully, "may I ask what makes the Velthari such effective warriors? We are strong, we are fearless, we are disciplined, we do not hesitate to kill when killing is required. And these qualities have served your people well for 3,000 years. They have brought us victory in every conflict until today." Hyun pointed out gently. Kexthos's forearms twitched, but he said nothing. Sol moved to stand beside her colleague. She was a xenopsychologist who studied how different species thought and felt. Her specialty was understanding minds that worked in completely different ways from human thinking. Commander Velthara, she addressed the crystal being. Your people's mathematical precision is legendary. You can calculate odds and probabilities faster than most computers. This is accurate, Velthara replied, her voice chiming softly. And this ability has made the Nixari nearly unbeatable in strategic warfare. Until today, Velthara admitted reluctantly. Both of your species have one thing in common, Sul continued. You've achieved perfection in your chosen methods of warfare. The Velthari have perfected direct combat. The Nixari have perfected tactical calculation. Other species here have perfected stealth or speed or coordination or dozens of other military skills. Perfection is strength, said the Craxi leader. Usually, Sol agreed, but perfection can also be limitation. When you become perfect at one way of doing things, you can become blind to other ways. The chamber buzzed with sounds of disagreement from various species. Are you suggesting, Kexthos asked slowly, that our strength is weakness? I'm suggesting that predictability, even perfect predictability, is a weakness when facing an enemy that knows your patterns. The AI knew our patterns, Velthara realized. It had been programmed with thousands of years of galactic military history. Exactly, said Hana, speaking for the first time. It knew how Velthari fight. It knew how Nixari think. It knew how every species in this room approaches warfare because you've been approaching it the same way for centuries. Consistency is efficiency, protested a commander whose species looked like walking flowers. When facing familiar problems, Jiho agreed. But when facing new problems, consistency becomes inflexibility. So humans succeed because you are inconsistent? The question came from a floating jellyfish-like being. Humans succeed because we adapt, Hana corrected. We don't have one perfect way of fighting because we never had the luxury of perfection. We had to learn to use whatever worked. Garam stood up from his seat at the edge of the group. As Earth's military ambassador, he had been quietly watching the proceedings, but now his diplomatic training took over. Your species evolved on worlds that allowed you to become specialists, he said, addressing the room. The Velthari homeworld rewarded strength and direct action. The Nixari crystalline cities rewarded calculation and precision. You became perfect at what your environments demanded. And humans? Asked Velthara. Earth rewarded adaptability, Garam replied. We faced ice ages and floods, predators and diseases, droughts and storms. We survived not by being perfect at any one thing, but by learning to do whatever the situation required. This explains past survival, conceded Kexthos, but not current military success. It explains everything, said Hana. We brought that same adaptability to warfare. We don't fight like humans because there's no such thing as fighting like humans. We fight like whatever works. But you had no weapons superior to ours, the Thekmori leader pointed out. No armor better than ours, no technology more advanced. Because we didn't need them, Suri said cheerfully. We had something better, which was options. The alien commanders looked confused. Your species choose the best weapon for every situation, Suri continued. We choose from every possible weapon for every situation. Sometimes the best tool is an explosion. Sometimes it's a conversation. Sometimes it's being invisible. Sometimes it's being helpful. You cannot be serious, said the Craxi leader. You cannot suggest that talking to enemies is equivalent to destroying them. Today it was more effective than destroying them, Wanho pointed out. Today was an artificial situation. All battles are artificial situations, Hyun said quietly. Every conflict has unique circumstances that require unique solutions. The species that win are the ones that find the right solution fastest. And humans find solutions faster than us? Velthara's voice carried disbelief. Humans consider more types of solutions than you do, Hana corrected. When you see an enemy, You think about how to defeat them using your species' preferred methods. When we see an enemy, we think about how to resolve the situation using any method that works, including methods that seem illogical, added Sunmi. All methods seem illogical until they work, said Taemin. The debriefing continued for hours. Alien commanders asked detailed questions about human tactics, human psychology, human decision-making processes. They wanted to understand how a species they had dismissed as inferior had accomplished the impossible. The answers they received changed everything. Humans didn't win through superior strength. They won through superior flexibility. They didn't succeed through better weapons. They succeeded through better options. They didn't dominate through perfect tactics. They adapted through imperfect solutions that somehow worked perfectly. Most shocking of all, humans achieved military success not despite their emotional nature, but because of it. Their ability to feel empathy made enemies into allies. Their capacity for mercy turned defeat into victory. Their tendency to think about civilians and consequences led to solutions that preserved rather than destroyed. In conclusion, Hanai said as the debriefing wound down, humans aren't efficient killers because killing isn't always the most efficient solution. Then what are you? Asked Kexthos. Efficient problem solvers, Hana replied. And in most situations, the real problem isn't how to kill your enemies. It's how to achieve your objectives while preserving what matters. What if the objective requires killing? The Thekamori leader challenged. Then we kill efficiently, Hana said simply. But we don't assume killing is required just because we're good at it. The vote, when it came, was unanimous. Earth's military forces would be elevated from support roles to strategic leadership positions in joint galactic operations. Human tactical doctrine would be studied and adapted across the galaxy. The Galactic Military Academy would establish new courses in adaptive warfare theory, and Hana would be the first human to teach them. One final question, said Velthara as the meeting ended. How do other species learn to think like humans? You don't, Hana said with a smile. You learn to think like yourselves, but with more options. Every species has strengths we don't have. The key is learning to combine those strengths with flexibility. And if we cannot learn such flexibility, then you continue being perfectly predictable specialists, Hana replied. And the next time you face an enemy that knows your patterns, you'll lose again. As the alien commanders filed out of the chamber, many of them looked thoughtful rather than defeated. Some were already discussing how to incorporate human-style adaptability into their own military doctrine. Kexthos was the last to leave. He stopped beside Hana's chair and looked down at the small human who had made his perfect warriors look like amateurs. You are dangerous, he said quietly. Very, Hana agreed cheerfully. I am glad you are our allies. So are we. Later, alone in the empty chamber, the human team sat in comfortable silence. Think they'll actually learn? Asked Suri. Some will, said Jiho. Others will try to turn adaptability into another specialized skill. And miss the point entirely, laughed Wanho. That's their choice, Hana said. We've shown them that there are other ways to win. What they do with that knowledge is up to them. And us? Asked Dojin. What do we do now? Hana stood up and stretched, looking around at the chamber where everything had changed. Now we go home and get ready for the real challenges. Because if there's one thing I learned today, it's that the galaxy is full of surprises. Good thing. We like surprises, Suri grinned. Good thing we're good at handling them, Hana corrected. As they left the chamber, their footsteps echoing in the empty space, none of them looked back. They had proven their point, changed the galaxy's understanding of warfare, and earned humanity a place among the stars. But most importantly, they had done it without becoming the kind of perfect, predictable killers the galaxy had expected them to be. They had remained human. And that, it turned out, was the most dangerous thing of all.